Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast in which Craig Touch, myself, Roland Hume, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry of writing and self-publishing. And before we begin, just remember that if you're a self-published author looking for help with your covers, your blurbs, your editing or advertising, we have a whole suite of services that we offer that can help. So check out the link in the description down below and maybe we can help you out. But let's turn our attention today to our very special guest. We are absolutely delighted to have all the way from the other side of the world, near the best beaches in the world, Lauren Clemett, who is a personal brand navigator, who's going to talk to us all about brand identity and stuff like that. So, Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today, because I know it is incredibly early over there in Australia. You're looking like so radiant and awake, whereas I'm struggling after like 6 cups of coffee. So thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. And it's easy here to be early awake because in Queensland in the summertime, it gets light at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So that's why we're all chirpy. Mind you, it gets dark. We don't have daylight savings. So it gets dark at like 6, 7 o'clock at night as well. So we're early to bed, early to rise in Queensland.
Oh, I'm jealous of that. I get my kids on the bus at 5:30 in the morning and it's pitch black. So, but thank you so much for joining us, Lauren. Of course, we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
Doing well, thank you. Yeah, I'm not even going to talk to you about your amazing weather because I got piles of snow outside that won't be melted for another month. But yeah, thanks for joining us from around the world. It's awesome. And you, like Roland said, you're a branding specialist, and you mentioned that you're a neurobranding expert. So why don't you tell me, what is neurobranding?
Neurobranding is such an interest. Well, I think it's interesting. Most people glaze over when I start talking about it, but there you go. It's all about how our brains, and I say see brands, but we remember and recall brands in so many different ways. And I'm sure there will be a jingle that you will remember from the radio or the TV from when you were a child. And you can sing that jingle and your children or grandchildren will look at you sideways and go, what on earth, what are you on? But you will remember the sound or the flavor or the texture. We all remember our favorite sweets from childhood and how now the bags are much smaller or the chocolate bars are much smaller than they used to be. It's all sorts of textures and feels and shapes and sounds and so on. It's everything a brand can do to be memorable and to weave its way into our brains so that no matter what happens in our lives, we always have that little bit of loyalty to that brand or that connection to that brand. And in an incredibly overwhelming world as we have today, where there is so much content and all these different channels, the one thing you want to do if you want your brand to stand out, you want people to buy from you, you want people to be loyal to you, is you need to be memorable. You need to stand out. You need to be seen and noticed. So yeah, understanding how the brain sees brands and how people connect and engage with you as a brand, that's really important if you want to get that profile.
Yeah, that's so funny because I was just talking about this, I think yesterday, where we were talking about a jingle that was in our heads from when we were kids, and I don't even know I can't remember now exactly which one it was, but I don't even think the brand is around anymore. But that one stuck in our heads, and we were saying, like, we all knew it, right? Our kids wouldn't know it, but it's that earworm that gets stuck in your head, and then yeah. But the question is, I guess, how can authors make something like that stick in your head, because they only have usually they only have images to work with, and most self-published authors aren't writing jingles or doing anything with multimedia other than their cover and their words. So
yeah,
is there a way to?
What a great question, because even some authors, and I've done this myself, use pen names. So they don't even exist. They've created a whole pseudonym that it's not even a real person. So I get it. We live behind the cover of our own book, which is really interesting. It's funny, actually, when you mentioned jingles and how you're remembering things from childhood. I once worked with a man called Howard Grieve. He was one of the head creatives at Saatchi & Saatchi in Wellington, where I worked in advertising. And he said to me, if you've got people around the agency humming the song that you've just made up, you're onto a good one.
Oh, I like that one.
So if the people are remembering it, if people can hum it, then you're away. I think with authors, it really comes down to what you want to be known for. So there's all sorts of different reasons, as we know, why people write books. Sometimes it's because you want to be a keynote speaker. You want to be a thought leader in that space, and you need to be known as, for example, I'm known as the brand navigator. I've written a book about finding your brand true north. My whole keynote presentation when I speak on stage at conferences is about personal branding and finding your brand true north. It all wraps around the compass because I grew up in the bush in New Zealand. So there's a whole story. Everything I do has got a compass on it. In fact, I'm about to give away a little gift to someone tomorrow, and it's got a little compass logo on the bag.
Oh.
You know, everything I do. The other day I gave away little packs with little marshmallows in them because we were talking about toasting them around the campfire at a leadership training camp. So yeah, everything comes from my brand. What I think the thing you need to think about as an author first is, what do you want your brand to be known for? Are you a children's author, or do you have beautifully illustrated books, or is it a fiction fantasy that you are writing a whole series of, and you want someone not just to buy the first one, you want to buy the 6th and 7th and 8th and 12th and 24th, edition of that story. So really getting known. And I mean, if you think about the authors, I mean, the key ones we talk about, Stephen King, everyone knows him, everyone knows his style of writing, they know what his genre is. J.K. Rowling, the big names. We all know a Dan Coates novel is going to be this sort of story, a Wilbur Smith novel is going to be this. People
Love
know
Wilbur
and understand.
Smith.
Yeah, no, exactly. So if you think about what you want your brand to be known for and what the purpose of your brand is and how you want people to remember you, then it's a much easier way to grow a profile, because you can be really creative when you've got a really cool brand.
Yeah, for really big authors, I think that it makes a lot of sense. And, everyone sort of knows, George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, and, but when you're a self-published author, it's a little harder, I think, to really create something big, especially if you're writing. I guess some genres probably work a little easier for that kind of brand, or at least in my mind. If I was a fantasy writer, I could build a brand around my world. But if I'm a romance writer and I write different books and different sort of subgenres of romance, maybe I have a series of there, a series of that, it's harder to sort of build a brand around that. I think a little bit about that one, Roland, you'll probably remember who's that author a while back that tried to, what did she do? She tried to take a common term, was it like alpha male or something, and then
it was
everybody
called
that
Cocky
was
Gate. So
cocky,
she had a whole series of romance novels about the Cocker brothers, and each one was cocky roommate, cocky this, cocky that.
Yeah.
So she decided to file cocky as a copyright term, and then she sued all these other authors, and it did not turn out well for her.
Right, like maybe she was trying to build her brand around like the cocky angle of romance, but I guess suing everyone isn't the best way to do that. And that's the problem is, you're going to be writing books that are very similar to other people's books. It's a different story, but I have cocky man in mine and you have cocky man in you. So I can't really, you can try, but it doesn't work. So how do authors, sort of self-published authors, go about building that brand?
Yeah, good question. And again, every self-published author has got a reason why they wrote that book. It's not like someone's come to them and said, I want your story, I'll publish it for you. There's a plan. There's some sort of reason why. It's either telling their story, their autobiography, they want the message to get out, they want to impact people's lives. And we've helped authors who've gone through incredible cancer journeys that have worked with us to grow their profile. We've had people who are still going through, issues with their health, and yet they write these resilience sort of stories to encourage others that they can achieve whatever they want to achieve and learn from my story and so on. The most of the people we work with who are self-published authors are doing it to grow their own profile so that they can build a business out of it, either a coaching business or a speaking business, or some of them are consultants. This one here is awesome, the lovely Stacey Ashley. She's got a beautiful brand.
Very nice.
Coffee Coasters, very nice brand. She's a leadership mentor. So she talks about, the difference with different leadership within a corporate. She works very much with the corporate industry. So I think the thing with self-published authors is you still have to have a thing, a difference, a point of difference with your brand that people will remember you for. And they will then ask you and go, oh, our team's really struggling at the moment with resilience. We've had a big change in the office. Maybe we've had some layoffs or we've had to move or whatever it is. We need someone to come in and rally the troops and get people together. There's that Stacey Ashley woman. She was really awesome. She sent me a copy of her book. I really liked her message. Let's give her a call and see if she's available. So it really is that little idea of building a snowball effect. So you might have your book or your landing page or your podcast, and then you've got something you send out to them once every 6 months, like a report or a postcard to remind them that you're there, and you build that awareness. And it's really annoying that people don't book you to do those things the first time they meet you, isn't it? If only they did. If only they went, oh, here, have lots of money. That would be really lovely. But it doesn't happen. You need to build trust. You need to build that sense of connection with people before they're prepared to buy your books or to employ you to coach their staff or to be a coach or a mentor for them. So, yeah, I guess if you're selling fiction books and you want to create a brand that people love and they become a bit, let's go the whole, Stephanie Meyer thing, are you team Jacob or team, right, also there's a whole subculture that develops around the fictional story and the characters that you've created, and people get tattoos of the brand on their bodies and all that sort of stuff. People get really into it. But if it's more of a monetary side of things, if it's more of a commercial aspect as a self-publisher, it really is about how do I get this one concept, this original idea that I've come up with, whether it's like Simon Sinek, start with why or whatever it is, how do I get that to form the basis and the foundation of my business?
So I guess if somebody is just writing, one-off fiction books, it's harder to build a brand than somebody who's built a series, built a world. I guess you could build a brand around your pen name. Might be a little harder, but if people remember your name, they're going to look your books up, and even if they're sort of more disjointed and not necessarily connected, if they do well. So somebody who's just starting out, who's written like one book, I guess it's a little too early to be thinking about that. Is that right? Or is that when you should?
I don't know if it's ever too early to think about your purpose as to why you're even doing this. And I think I have come across a few authors and they go, oh, I've got a book. And you go, oh, why did you write it? I don't know why. I just wrote it because it was my story or I came up with it or whatever. And I'm so annoying. I'm always asking that why question, why? Why did you do it? What's going on? What's the purpose of this? I know when I created my pen name, I was writing books around my own health story. So I'd had endometriosis as a young woman, and I really struggled with that. I'd had eczema and asthma and so on. And I managed to deal with all of those things with better nutrition and building my immune system and all these sorts of things. So I wrote a book about the endometriosis treatment that your doctor will never tell you about, because it was all to do with what I was putting in my mouth, what food I was eating and so on. And my doctor never even asked me that stuff. But I didn't want to be known as the endometriosis person. It wasn't my thing. I was passionate about it, but I want to speak about personal branding. That's what I really love. So I created a brand name. My pen name was Lisa J. Faith. Lisa was the most common baby name of the average age of the reader of the book. So I went back to, okay, who's the reader? They're about a 40-year-old woman. They're really struggling maybe with, endometriosis, or early 30s. They're a first-time mum. What was the favorite baby age in that year? And it was Lisa was one of the favorite baby names. And then the J was just a J. It was any old letter of the alphabet. But Faith, obviously, is some sense of trust of knowing that this person's actually got something that's worthwhile reading. So Lisa J. Faith was created. She's got a whole personality on Amazon. You can go and find her books. They're still on there somewhere. So you can create a persona and a way of people feeling about your brand, even if it's a pen name.
I mean, I was going to say personal branding, I think, is such a great thing, even if you're not a writer. I mean, I used to do some bartending, and kind of you'd be like, okay, what is it that I deliver to the customers who come in? And it's like, oh, you got your quirky British accent and you're perky and you make cocktails. And it's like, you got your thing. So everyone's like, this is Roland. He's cool. He's British. He makes really cool old fashions. And it's like, that's your personal brand. That's who you are. People know you because of it. So I think everybody across the world should think of like, what is my personal brand? What is it I stand for? What do I want people to think of me when they meet me?
Yeah, absolutely. And if it can be something it's not put on, do you know what I mean? Like, you can't put on your British accent. That's where you grew up, right? So anything you do with your personal brand, my brand is all about finding direction and purpose. And it's because I lived in the bush. We used maps and compasses. I was a Girl Guide, or Girl Scout, they call them, I think, in the US. But yeah, that's my life. I don't make that up. I keep pulling these stories from my own memories of what happened when I lived at a YMCA camp as a kid, living in the bush and all the rest of it, to keep talking to people about how to encourage them to step out of that overwhelm and onto the path of success. So all of these little things all come out of my brand because I don't have to even think about it. I just live it.
Yeah, and I love that idea of, how you came up with the pen name, because a lot of people will just sort of randomly just pick names. I mean, that's kind of how I did it, but because I had lots of pen names as well. And, I never would have thought to try and get the average age and figure that, and then what's the name that would, and then maybe I could have done something around romance or Johnny Love, but
Well, you want to choose your porn name. Surely you'd use your porn name.
Well, sure, the porn name is
different. Your porn name? Your porn name is the name of your first pet.
And then the street.
And the street that you grew up on. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that was, I don't even know the street I grew up on, but Buddy would have been my first name.
Buddy. Hey.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess in that sense, you can put a little bit of thought into that. But so once you've discovered that, there are things, what do you want to do with that brand? I know, you were showing a couple items, and definitely there are authors out there that do create stuff to send to readers, often to their street team, or to, if they'll have contests. So, obviously you can send copies of your book and sign copies of your book, but a lot of people will do bookmarks or, coasters or, little trinkets that they can send. And then that would, if you have a brand, that's what you would put on there, I guess. If you have a company, then, often it'll be your logo. But a lot of authors wouldn't have a company, so I guess it would just be sort of their pen name. And then I guess you're using that sort of stuff to get sort of your name out there, have it spread so that people see it and ask about it. Is that the purpose of all those things? Especially if you're giving it to people that are already fans of yours, let's say. You don't necessarily, you're not trying to pull those people in, they're already there. But I guess is the idea that other people will see it and it'll spread out.
Yeah. I call it having an avalanche of influence. And it's one of the major things for any brand is you've got to think about who are the people who are most likely to start off buying your book. Who are the first readers? So who are your ideal readers? What age are they? What do they do? Why do they want your book? What are they interested in? Why would they be looking for this? What's happened in their world or in their life to get them to a point where they're going, I really need a book about this, whether that's weight loss or whether it's a bit of escapism with some fantasy or whether they want some romance in their life, whatever it is. What's the reason why they've looked for this particular type of story? So really get to know your target reader. And once you've figured out who they are, then go back up the food chain and think about who are the people that they are asking. Have you read a good book recently? Who do you suggest I should read a book? Where are they going to get that advice from? Who are they asking? Who are the influencers? It could be someone on TikTok. It could be somebody on LinkedIn. It could be one of their co-workers. It could be someone who works in the health industry if they're looking at some sort of solution for an issue they might have. Who do they go to ask for advice? And then start targeting them. So this is what people don't think about, right? We think about, let's give a book to people who might want to buy it. What if you could give a really nice pack to somebody who's got a whole audience of people who are ideal readers for you, and all you do is you give them a copy of your book with a really nice pack, maybe a pen and a coaster or a coffee mug or something else, some nice little gift wrapped thing to say, hey, I love what you do. I've been following you on Instagram or following on LinkedIn. I just thought I'd give you a copy of my book. I'd love to share more about that with your community. If you've got an opportunity to do that, that would be great. But just giving it to you because I just love what you do. So you're not selling to them. You're not pushing yourself on them. You're just letting them know that you exist, right? So now your brand lives in the world of all these influencers that are out there. And you probably only need maybe a dozen of those people. to have your coffee mug on their desk, or your mouse pad or pen or whatever it is that you've given them that sits around their office or in their home. And then the next time someone says, oh, I really want a good book that does that, oh, I know exactly the person. And they are referring you. And it's this ripple effect, like an avalanche, yeah? It's the best. Word of mouth marketing is the best form of marketing. And I'm saying that I own an agency, and it's the worst form of marketing for me because I can't do word of mouth for you, right? It doesn't. You can do that yourself, yeah? But there's 3 reasons why word of mouth is so good. Number 1, it's free. It is totally free. Yes, you might have the cost of sending a little pack off to somebody, having a coffee with them, letting you know you exist and I write these books and this is what I'm trying to achieve, right? So there's a little cost of investment of your time to do that. But it's basically free to get word of mouth marketing. Number 2, it's somebody else talking about your books, somebody else saying what a great author you are. Yeah, it's that third-party endorsement. It's not you raving on about yourself. It's somebody else saying, oh my goodness, Roland's book, did you read it the other day? It was phenomenal. Somebody else talking about you. And the third thing is, it is that ripple effect. You know, that person will tell somebody who will tell someone who will tell someone, and you'll start to get book purchases from places you didn't even know existed. So, and you'll pop up on these different shows, or you'll get mentioned, or you'll get in somebody's blog just because you're in their environment. So building those relationships with influencers and people who influence your readers is such an important way of getting your name out there and getting your brand out there. And so it's not just quirky little things for your readers, like, yes, do a bookmark, give away pens, whatever. It's who can you give that sort of really nice, you know, lumpy mail, that touchable stuff too.
Oh, lumpy mail, I like that.
Lumpy mail, yeah. It's always nice, isn't it, to not get a bill in the mail, to get something that's a bit more gifty.
Unless they save up all the bills and put them in a big envelope. And you're like, it's a book. No, it's not.
Yeah. Surprise.
I love that idea of I love the way you put it. I mean, everyone sort of understands, you know, the idea of these days social media and trying to get an influencer to talk about yourself, which is, you know, easier said than done. But I like the way that you put it of, you know, figure out who your target market is and then move up the food chain and figure out who's influencing that target market. And it's not always going to be social media influencers. There might be other avenues that you can reach those people, and maybe there are easier ways to reach them. But yeah, the social media influencer, that is a big thing these days. For authors, what are some of the ways that they can get known by those people? I mean, often they have big fees. You know, you contact the big influencers, they want a lot of money. It's not necessarily so easy as just send them a bit of swag and then they'll you know, start promoting you. So do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. And when I say influencers, yeah, it's not always the big guys. Great. If you've got that relationship, maybe you've got an agent that can help you, go for it. Micro influencers are just as good. And that might be somebody who has a podcast that they interview authors on, like this one. My next step with you guys is going to be, right, what's your postal address? Here's a copy of my book. You know, so you're always going to be making sure that you're looking after the people who are spreading the word about you. I was interviewed once by a guy in Texas, and he didn't really read books, wasn't interested, but he loved beer. So I sent him some beer. So, you know, what's the thing that you can do just to be memorable so that it's like you're always in their realm when it's happening? With influencers again as well, think about how many ways you can actually support them. So if you are an author and you want to get your brand out there and you've decided podcasting is the way to do that, I want to be a podcast guest, right? Exactly what we're doing today. That's awesome. Do a couple of things though. Make sure you show up, make sure you give good value, but make sure after the podcast is recorded, you share that thing like mad. You get out there and you promote that show and you talk about that show and you give that love back to the hosts of the show. What are they going to do next time someone asks them about a really good author to interview on their podcast? You know, or someone saying, oh, we really need some good authors at our expo, our business expo that's coming up. Who do you recommend? They're going to go straight to the people that they remember and they recall and that have created an impact. So absolutely make sure you are targeting the right people. But as you say, it's not about, Craig, spending lots and lots of money and trying to convince people. It's just about being a good human. Be a nice person, you know, be genuinely interested in what other people are doing, help them out, give them some love, and don't expect it to happen tonight. It really just doesn't work that way. It'll take you 3 years to build your personal brand. Minimum.
Interesting. You're very specific about that.
3 years. Every single client I've worked with, it's been 3 years. Myself, it took me ages. It's so annoying. It took me a whole year to even figure out what my brand was before I even started building it, which is really annoying. It's like the plumber with a leaky tap. But yes, 3 years. So don't expect you reach out to all these podcasts and you get booked on 12 of them in 1 week. Remind them, go back to them. They're busy people as well. And it's not that they don't like you, they're just overwhelmed. It's like everything. We've all got so much going on in our lives. Just keep going back, keep being not annoying, but being visual, being noticed and being seen. And eventually, you'll get there. It'll be a snowball effect. The other thing that's really helpful is asking for reviews. And I know you guys do a great service with getting reviews, getting testimonials, getting beta testing readers. The more you can say to somebody, hey, I'm writing a new book. It's going to be released in the next couple of months. I'd like to give you a copy to beta read it for me. And as long as you can give me your feedback and maybe a testimonial, so that by the time you launch your book, you've already got reviews. So there's some, and plus you're getting the beta reader, which is awesome. You're getting the person who is interested in your book to give you feedback, which is really cool. So beta reading, entering your book in awards. Oh my goodness. I think my book's won 7 book awards, and some of the awards don't just do awards, they offer you a literary review as part of the award process, which is really cool. So now it's not just getting a review from a beta reader and someone it's the editor of the Titan Literary Awards or whatever it is, Literary Titan I think is, it's the Book Excellence Awards. There's so many out there. So the minute you can say, oh yeah, it's an award-winning book, not just a best-selling book, it's an award-winning book, all of a sudden that gets you further along in the food chain as well. So all of those sorts of things, making sure you've got a really, really good landing page for your book on your website. Make sure you've mentioned it on your LinkedIn profile and you've put it up there, the fact you're an author and this is the book that you've got. Making it available to people. This is all the tips you guys give, isn't it? It's like, yes, have a paperback. Yes, have an ebook. Have an audio book. Enable people to access your book in so many different ways and different learning skills and so on, so that you can cover all the bases.
Yeah, I think a lot of self-published authors think about those things in terms of very specifically about what it will do for them for their book. Like, an ebook is where they're going to make most of their sales. Should they bother doing a paperback? Should they bother doing an audiobook? How much is it going to earn for them? But they're not really thinking about it in terms of building a brand, getting yourself out there. Every single new item you have with your name on it is another point of entry where people can discover you. And that I think is one of the keys, right? Is that idea of getting yourself out there. Like you said, coming on to author podcast, especially one like this, where we're not talking specifically about the book. A lot of times people will pitch me to come on the show and they'll just tell me, oh, I wrote a book about whatever. And it's like, well, it's not the purpose of our show. There are podcasts out there where you can go on and you talk about your show, and that's great, and their audience are readers, so they want to hear about that. But our audience is authors, so a lot of times, if somebody's pitching us the idea of coming on the show, they kind of are like, well, why would I want to come on the show if I'm not really talking about my book? But it's that whole idea of getting out there and just getting yourself known, getting as wide as possible, so that people will discover you and more people will hear about you, and they'll create that sort of ripple effect that you talked about.
Yeah, it's a great point, Craig, that you make. It's funny, isn't it? We all think 100,000 times more about what we want than about what other people want. And if you can just for a moment think, what does the host of that show want? What really good content could they use that I could help them with? And yet it might be that you've written a book and an author can get on your show as long as they come and talk about how they managed to write a book when they had 7 children, all under the age of 10 and a full-time job. That's the story that you would want to hear, right? How to be productive and write a book when you're really busy. How to write a book about a topic I knew nothing about. All that sort of stuff. Think about what is it that the person needs and wants that you're trying to get part of your circle, right? So always putting yourself in their shoes is a great first step. So great point, Craig. Absolutely. I mean, it all comes down to purpose, doesn't it? What is the purpose of this whole thing that we're doing? What's the purpose of writing your book? What do you want to get out of it? What do you want to give to others? What's the impact you want to make? And who cares about that? So that we can go out and find those people and create our tribe.
Yeah, I think that is where the disconnect is with a lot of authors, because they're not, you don't become a self-published fiction author because you want to do all this other stuff. You just want to write your book. And I get that, right? So a lot of people they don't really understand the other business side of it. All the things that they have to do are very, very specific to the end result of getting their book published. So I've got to get a cover, and I've got to write a blurb, I've got to go on and, some newsletters and stuff. And then they hear, oh, well, why don't you do some podcasts? And I'm like, yeah, but what's that going to do for me? So yeah, you're right. Like they're talking about those things that, what is that going to do for me? But it's a bigger picture, I guess, that a lot of authors aren't seeing because they're not thinking about themselves as a brand. They're thinking themselves as an author of this one book.
As an author. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's funny, actually, over Christmas, we decided to give books for Christmas. And the main reason.
Lovely idea.
Wasn't that a nice idea? And the main reason was because it had been such a frantic year. It was like, I just want a couple of weeks where I do nothing but read books. And I think I read about 10 books, which was awesome. But one of the last ones I read was called The Countess from Kirribilli. And Kirribilli is a place in Sydney where the big manor house is there. It was the houses of where the Prime Minister normally lives and so on. But the Countess of Kirribilli was born, I think she was in the 1900s. I'm trying to find up online. It was the 1900s. She was an author between World War I and World War II, so a way back now. Elizabeth von Arnhem, her name was, if anyone wants to know. It's an awesome book, a really interesting book about an author. But the thing about her was, the thing that made her so well known was that she was a mystery. She never published under her own name. She always denied that she'd written the books that she'd actually written. And she created this whole mysterious thing about who is the author, Elizabeth, of these books. And her name wasn't even Elizabeth. So, and so you don't need to be out there. You can absolutely have a writing room, sit there, write books, love doing that, never be seen, never be known and so on. But you can create a thing. You can create a story. You can create some sort of myth or legend around you so that there's some sort of engagement or interest. Other than that, you really are relying on your book cover, your reviews, and your Amazon ranking, or maybe if someone's nice enough to stick it in the front window of their bookshop.
And so is everyone else.
And so is everyone else. They're all fighting for that space, yeah? And I mean, I've heard of authors going into books. This is when bookstores were still a big thing, and they would go to the shelf where their book was, and they'd turn all the other books around and put theirs out. Just, it happens at airports all the time. If somebody's got a book on the shelf, that you'll see them, they've gone and they've put their book nice and everyone else has turned sideways. But yeah, you have to have a way of, you talked about it before, Craig, an earworm. Yeah, like that jingle, that thing that makes people remember you, that makes them think about you, that makes them all of a sudden go, oh, that's that person who writes in the nude. Oh, that's that person who smokes 18,000 cigarettes a year. Whatever it is, come up with something. That's the author who has 100 cats. That's the author who gives all of her money to charities from every book that she writes. What is it? Have a thing that's the woman who lives on the island that writes those books, and she gets her food delivered by boat. Whatever it is, come up with something. He only writes at night. He only writes between the hours of 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., whatever it is, Come up with a thing so that there's a myth or a story or a legend or a reason why somebody should be interested in you that they can remember.
Even thinking like Hunter S. Thompson, he had that wonderful article, his daily writing routine, and it was, wake up at 3 p.m, take some cocaine, do some whiskey.
Why not?
So you create.
This show is not authorizing the use of drugs, by the way. But
that's right.
Well, hey, this is America. It's a free country. You do what you feel you need to do.
Marijuana is legal now in most of Canada, so So you create your own mythology, and then how do you? I guess in the age of the internet, it's maybe easier to spread those stories than it would be. You just create an anonymous Reddit account, and then you'd be like, oh, I heard that this author is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got a shoe fetish. You could look. The thing is, today, when I first started in advertising and branding, was before the internet, right? That's how old I am. And the only channels were like the TV, which was incredibly expensive to get onto. The radio was a little bit cheaper, but it wasn't as interesting because it was the theatre of the mind. You couldn't put it in front of someone as a picture, right? Because you're on the radio. You had magazines, which lived in doctors' offices most of the time. A little bit of billboard and outdoor. They're really a little bit of lumpy mail, that direct mail. But it was expensive and it took time and it took effort and you didn't know if it worked, and you'd get out there and, all the ROI was difficult to track and so on. Today, you can start your own radio station with a podcast, just like what you're doing now. Put it up on Podbean, put it out on Spotify. You can start your own TV channel on YouTube. You can start your own magazine on Reddit or Medium or LinkedIn or whatever you want to do. So there's really no barrier to stop you from creating your own brand. It's just a matter of investing. And I talk about it like you're riding a bike, right? So if you're riding a bike, there's two wheels, mostly on bikes. But let's not talk about tricycles, but two wheels. One of them is your book, is the writing of the book and the beta reading and the testing and the cover imagery and the getting your landing page ready and marketing it and so on. That's the one wheel of the book, of the bike, is your book, actually creating the content. The other wheel is creating your brand, creating your community, your following, your marketing, getting the word out there. And if you don't have both of those wheels both turning at the same time, it's going to be a very, very slow road to market and launch your book. Imagine if you could launch your book with an audience sitting there waiting. They've already expressed an expression of interest. They've gone to your website. They've said, please, 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 I want to be the first person to get a copy of your book. Put my name down there. You've already got people waiting to buy or pre-selling. You've already got influencers talking about you. You've got something going on about, the fact you've got 1 million cats, whatever it is. There's all this hubbub and buzz going on. And so by the time your book actually comes out, people are waiting to buy it. So you need both wheels of that bike going at the same time. While you're writing your book, you need to be building your community, building your brand, building your awareness.
I like that.
And yeah, I can just imagine all the authors that are sort of listening to this and like, oh man, I gotta do that. All the stuff I have to do. But I guess that's where people like you come in, where you can, just like you can hire a cover designer, you can hire a blurb writer, you should hire an editor, you can get beta readers, you can hire a brand specialist, you can hire somebody to help you with this, because no one expects you to be an expert in all those different things. You have to wear those hats, but they won't all fit, so you have to find someone else who can help you with them, right? So how do you work with, like, if an author came to you, how would you start off with them? I guess I can imagine your first question is about, what is your brand? Who are you? What are you trying to do, right? But once you figure that out, what would you do from that point?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Well, obviously, there's a lot of services that you guys offer, which make a huge amount of sense. Because if you are an author and you don't know about these things like you guys do, the covers, the blurbs, making sure you've got everything, even just getting someone to set up a landing page for people to express an interest in purchasing your books while you're writing it. I mean, and creating that buzz on social media. Yes, you can absolutely outsource all of that. Our focus, we have the Audacious Agency, and our focus very much is on winning awards. And leveraging awards to grow your profile. So for an author, yes, after I've asked all those fabulous questions, why are you even writing this? What's the purpose? All those sorts of things. We map out 12 months of awards. So what are the awards opening over the next 12 months that you should be entering? Which specific category should you go for? And some book awards are really simple. It's just the author, the ISBN, the Amazon link, you pay your fees and you're in, and you just wait and see whether you win, right? So that's about all you can do. Some of them you've got to send your physical copies of your book off to readers. I'm actually one of the judges in the Able Book Awards this year, and I'm about to be receiving a pile of books to read, which is exciting. I love books. Anyway, so yeah, there's all these standard books, but there's also business book of the year, that you need to write an essay of around 625 words for the Stevie Awards. So there's all these different awards out there, the Globie Awards, Literary Titan Awards, there's Independent Author Awards, Indie Author, there's so many out there, but we map out 12 months of those. And there's a reason for that. Some of them are open for 12 months. So the Book Excellence Awards is about to close. They're calling at the moment for their last call entries. They'll close sometime in the next couple of weeks, and then they'll reopen again in about a month, and they'll be open all year. So if you want to leverage an award, right, and go, hey, my book's an award-winning book, you need to know when the best time is to enter them. And you're not going to have to wait a whole 12 months to figure out whether it's won an award. So it's really important to have a plan. I would suggest for most authors, just have a checklist. What are the bare minimum things you need to promote your book? You need a website. You need to be up on Amazon. You need to probably have an ISBN and be somewhere on Ingram Spark so that people can order a paperback version of your book anywhere in the world. Ideally, you have an audio book, but if you can't do it straight away, just build that into the process. You need to have a bio and some sort of media kit or a headshot, so that when you want to get onto podcasts, you can send that off to the podcast host. Just the basics, a little checklist. What are the basic things? You need to have a social media presence, ideally some sort of LinkedIn profile or Reddit or Medium, or find a platform that really suits your brand. Just do that checklist, get those things done. That's why it takes 3 years, guys. That's why it takes 3 years, because it doesn't happen overnight. What's that lovely commercial? It doesn't happen overnight, but it's worth it. I can't remember what the tagline is, but yeah. If you want to build a brand and sell lots of books, if you want to just be writing books for a living and have lots of people buy your books, then you unfortunately need to invest some time in building your profile and building a brand.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah. So, I mean, if there's an award that's open for 12 months, but they're still accepting them on month 11, what's the point of being 12 months early? Is there an advantage there? Wouldn't you be forgotten?
That's an awesome question. Thank you for asking that, Craig. Yeah, the cool thing about awards, and this is something that there's like a myth that everyone goes, right, you enter an award and you don't tell anybody until they're announced, and certainly only tell the world if you've won, right? So anything else you don't, that's what everybody believes. That's what everybody thinks. That's a bit of a myth. The way we do it is the minute we submit into an award, we start leveraging. So you get out there and say, hey, my book has now been nominated for a Book Excellence Award. Book Excellence are actually awesome. The minute you submit, they give you a load of resources. They give you press release templates. They give you images and graphics so you can use a nominated thing. So you absolutely can leverage that thing for the whole 12 months. And if you pay, I think, a little bit extra, you can get a review as well, and you can use that review to promote your book. And then when you win, you get the judges' feedback from a lot of awards, and you can use them to promote your book. So absolutely, you don't wait until the end. You leverage it as you go through that journey, for sure.
Well, that's I guess talking about I've been nominated is almost as good, and then if you don't win, you just stop talking about it.
No, you still talk about it. You absolutely still talk about it. Oh, look, there's a funny story. A guy I know who's here in Australia, he runs an amazing business networking organization, started up his own awards program, and he was talking to me about how when he had a Subway franchise, do you get Subway? Yeah, takeout. So he had a Subway franchise.
Yeah,
awesome. So he went to their conference, and it was all suit and tie, and they were all looking nice and all the rest of it around the table. And in the middle of the table was a centerpiece. I don't know. It was like probably a candle and some flowers or something, whatever. It's a little centerpiece, and he held the centerpiece with his team, and they took a photograph, and he put it up on social media. Right within minutes, people were congratulating him on the win of his award. And all he's doing is posing with the centerpiece of the table, right? So what the lesson of that story is that even just associating yourself with awards, just being part of them. I mean, if you think about it, how many times have you watched an Oscar-nominated movie? It might not have won. And in fact, some of the nominated ones are better than the ones that win, right? You've gone to a friend's house and you thought, I can't go empty-handed. I need to take a bottle of wine with me. And you quickly run into the liquor store and you grab a bottle and you go, oh, I don't know what to grab. I'll grab the one with the medallion on it that's won some awards. Right?
It says 91 points in the Northeastern Australian kangaroo.
That's the one. That's exactly it. So it's just associating yourself with those awards. Even if you don't win, the fact that you're nominated, you're a finalist, it's not all about telling the rah, look, I won. I'm just so pleased I entered. Look at the judges' feedback. Look at the other. We had one client who won an award in it was a new product development category. She won a bronze Stevie Award. The people who won gold in her category were Google.
Wow.
So imagine a little tiny business or being a little author writing a couple of books and you're in the same category as Stephen King. So, just associating yourself, that branding by association with awards is phenomenal.
So I guess there's some truth to when, actors get nominated and they say, well, it's an honor just to be nominated.
Oh yeah. Absolutely the truth. And you've got to thank you to my family who put up with me all those months writing the book. Thank you to my publisher who helped me, or my publishing house. Thank you to the artist who created my cover or my illustrations. All of those people that you can tag and like and take on the journey with you. Absolutely. And it's also not just about talking how great your book is. Talk about the journey. Were you writing it when you were on a boat somewhere? Is this based on a life story? Is there somebody, a character in it that's based on someone you cared about? There's so many different aspects of your journey as an author that you can share to create a following and be memorable.
I love that. Well, we are unfortunately reaching the top of the hour, but actually that seems like the perfect place to kind of wrap things up. There's so much to take away from everything you shared with us. Now, we're going to ask you to tell everyone where they can find out more information and stuff like that. But before I do, Craig, do you have any final questions or thoughts for Lauren?
I've got so much out of this as well. So, I feel like this has been the time flew by so quickly. It's just been a lot of really, really good information and a lot of really good examples of stuff, which is really great when, you can get that kind of stuff, because it's concrete sort of information is what people are looking for. It's one thing to sort of talk about things in sort of a, wispy little manner about, you should do this brand, you should create a brand, everybody should create a brand, right? But we have you gave us really good reasons why and really good advice and really amazing examples of the type of things that you can do. So I really appreciate that. So thanks for coming on. Hopefully we can get you back on another time, because I feel like there's plenty more we can discuss.
Yes, we've only just scratched the surface. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, I think you have both got such a passion, obviously, given what you do, to help people get their stories out there. And there's so many amazing stories. There's so many incredible books that haven't been written because people either doubt themselves or they think they can't do it, or no one wants to hear my story. And yet the impact you can make by sharing what you have is phenomenal. You just need to get it out there, but trust your gut, go for it, and know whatever you're doing with your authorship is a big part of your personal brand. And it's a journey that you need to invite other people to share and to go on with you. Otherwise, it's a bit of a lonely life, isn't it, being an author? I know some of us love it. I think it took 3 months to write my book because I had a deadline. My last book, somebody said to me, oh, you've got a book to give away at the conference you're speaking. I said, sure. And I didn't have a book at the time, so I madly wrote and published it. But it can be a lonely journey as an author, whereas building your brand gives you the opportunity to really create, connection with the people who are participating in your story as well.
Well, that is brilliant advice. So, Lauren, hopefully everyone has listened to this and thinks that you are the best thing since sliced bread. Where can they find out more about you and more about what you do and personal branding through the eyes of Lauren?
Absolutely. Look, I'm all over LinkedIn. I built my personal brand myself. Obviously, if I hadn't done that, I'd be pretty poor person at telling people about personal branding. So search my name. You'll find us at the Audacious Agency if you want to look into winning awards for your books. If you want to know more about personal branding, my book, Finding Your Brand True North, is available on just about every platform. And you can search that as a URL as well, findingyourbrandtruenorth.com. But yeah, the Audacious Agency is where we work out your profile, helping you win awards and leverage awards to grow a brand. But yeah, look up my name, find me on LinkedIn, and check me out. It's all good.
That is wonderful. Well, we will make sure to pop a link down in the description of this video. So if you have enjoyed everything that Lauren has shared with us, which I'm sure you have, make sure you scroll down there, click on that link, and find out more about her. And while you're there, you will pass that big empty comment section. Why don't you leave Lauren a comment and let her know how much you have appreciated everything she shared with us today? Let us know about your own personal branding or your own personal branding journey that you've experimenting with. We would love to hear it. We read every single comment and really appreciate them. And of course, while you're down there, there is that subscribe button if you haven't already. There's that like button, and there is a little bell icon you can click on and get alerted every time there is a new episode of Fully Booked. And of course, there will be a brand new episode of Fully Booked coming out next week. So until then, cheerio.